Question, and this is from one of our Twitter followers, Mary Fox 20. So, hi, Mary. Mary says, I'm launching an e-magazine that highlights expat bloggers and entrepreneurs in Paris. How do I best share this with print publications? The hardest part is starting out. How do you build your name when you're still a bit new? What are the do's and don'ts? Okay. Okay, so it's a great question, and your e-magazine sounds really exciting. So where you want to start with is you want to determine which print magazines are going to be appropriate for this type of message, right? So if it's highlighting expat bloggers and entrepreneurs in Paris, then you want to think about what magazines would actually do a story on something like that. Like, who would that be of interest to? So start there and be really honest with that. That can be a part that can get, people get tripped up with because they might want to go after a magazine and really they're never going to cover a story on that. So since you're focusing on entrepreneurs, you'd want to be looking at entrepreneurial magazines, Inc. and Entrepreneur and things like that. And so you could go about it one of two ways. One, you could certainly talk about, the inspiration behind why you started this. I'm sure there's some kind of story there, like there's something that compelled you to do this, right? So important. So that would be a little bit more driven on the actual e-magazine itself or the community that you're creating and the reason that you created the community, right? So that's one way you could go. Or another way could be, positioning yourself as an expert in that field. So are there any tips or tricks or things that you've learned in this process? Or maybe, this is you, like you're creating this because you are one of these people. What have you learned? What can you teach an audience, right? What can you really share that's going to be of value? So magazines love people that can give them commentary on stories that they're working on. So it's hard to get like a whole profile piece, especially in the beginning phases of your business. But if you can step in and be an expert on a topic and give them ideas and advice on things that they haven't heard before, then that's a beautiful way to go. So that's just two ways that you can think about sharing your information with the appropriate print publications. And then your second question, it looks like how to build your name when you're still a bit new. What are the do's and don'ts? So I would actually, because you are an online business, so if you're doing an e-magazine, I would categorize you as an online-based business. Print publications are great for credibility, as I've kind of assigned it in the beginning in this last question. We talked about how it can give you a beautiful endorsement for your business, but it's not as common for people to read something in a print magazine, remember they read it, go back to their computer, type in or Google, the name of your magazine. That's just a lot of steps for us to take. So what actually works better when you're an online-based business or magazine is to go after online influencers that reach your target market. You're going to get a lot more readers that way, a lot more customers that way. That's the best way to go. So what you want to look for are people in the online space, and you can think of, just to give you an example, it might be somebody like a Tim Ferriss. I mean, that's going to be at the high end. But just so you understand where I'm going, people that have massive audiences or even small audiences, but engaged audiences that either accept guest blogs or guest contributions, or maybe they interview people, maybe they spotlight people in new businesses. So you want to seek out those folks. And what I would do is have a nice plan put together of maybe 25 to 50 online sites that have a great community that would be perfect for what you're trying to share, and try to get involved with them in some way, whether it's delivering content to them via guest blog, et cetera, all the ways I just lined out. And that's going to actually be the lowest hanging fruit for you in order to raise your visibility and get your name out there and get readers, which I'm sure is really important at this point for you to do that. And then while you're doing that, while that's your number one strategy, you can then start to pitch some of these bigger magazines that are a harder get. But at the same time, you're not just relying on them. You're really doing something that's working and bringing you traffic and readers, and not just relying on like one magazine mention to bring you everything. So you'll kind of have these two strategies cycling together, and that should bring a nice, beautiful community to what you're doing. So best of luck with that, Mary.